Hello and welcome to GhanaWeb TV with me, Mauli Aholimega. Today we'll be delving into the world of science fiction and storytelling with a visionary filmmaker who is redefining the African culture through imaginative and telling stories through science fiction. My guest is Kwame-Michael Brako, and we'll be delving into the movie industry, specifically focusing on science fiction and storytelling. Michael, welcome to the show. Good to see you. How are you?
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Great. You're a very hard man to find.
Yes,
But it's really good to have you. So just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay. I was originally born in Accra and then moved to the U.S. when I was about 3 years old. My background started in traditional art, painting, charcoal art, later into graphic design. And then several years later into my adult life, I found myself working behind the scenes doing visual effects in films such as The Avengers, Iron Man, Ninja Turtles,
Oh, wow.
a plethora of films. And did some gaming as well, got into the industry of gaming, and now here I am.
Very
I started in
interesting.
Hollywood, and now I'm here in Ghana.
Oh, so you've been in Hollywood. You've done some work in Hollywood. You mentioned Ninja Turtle. I remember when I was a child, I used to watch a lot of Ninja Turtle. What specifically were you doing on most of those sets in Hollywood?
So I did a lot of visual effects. Okay. This would be things like explosions, a lot of fires, also some stereography. Stereography was converting some of the films into 3D. So when you have the 3D glasses on, you get the depth perception of it as well.
Okay. So now let's delve into what you do specifically and what you're doing now. You are into science fiction. Everyone is like, what's a science fiction? So if you can tell us what that is and what it entails.
Yes, so I grew up watching a lot of Star Trek and science fiction type movies, which have to do with things in the future, the cosmic, spaceships, and working in the film industry as well. It brought in a lot of the elements of that. So what I'm doing is taking science fiction and in what we call Afrofuturism. Afrofuturism takes the concept of the African culture in my regards and fuses it with the future. So it's bringing futurism with the culture but keeping some of the elements of the past. And so it's more like a visionary tale, but then I'm also bringing in African mythology with the works.
Let's just go back just a little bit to what inspired you to go into the film industry, particularly some of the works that you've done in Hollywood.
Well, the interesting story is I wanted to be in movies. I wanted to be in
Also, you wanted to be an actor yourself?
Yeah, I did. But
and then what happened?
Well, because of where I was, I thought, there wasn't much opportunity. I was staying in a small town in Minnesota, and I thought, well, I'm never going to break through. So what I decided to do was learn filming. So I put myself in my own films. And so it just so happened that as I kept doing the practice, I found myself in the future just working in Hollywood scenes behind the scenes. So it started up trying to be in front of camera to being behind the camera. And it was the movie Matrix. Have you seen the
Yeah, I've seen Matrix, yeah.
It was the film Matrix where Neo does this bullet time effect and
where he's moving backwards and all that.
When I saw that, that was the first time I said... Oh,
so that kind of just sparked...
Yes. From there, I thought, oh, what is that technique? And in fact, I was in med school at that time, or going towards a medical degree. And when I saw that movie, everything changed.
So did you dump your medical path to pursue art?
Yes, I remember the day it did. I was actually in my last year, and I was delivering a package to somewhere on the university, and I took a wrong turn and walked through some studio, somewhat like this. And my eyes just lit up, and I thought, what is this? And I just remember going to my father and telling him, I think I'm going to change.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, how are you're an African. I mean, your parents would definitely not take that. As a medical student, why have you decided not to pursue your medical career?
Exactly.
And you want to go into filming, which is like something, I mean, African parents don't really warm up to the idea. I mean, now it's okay, but back then...
Yeah, I believe my father may have thought, why would I be pursuing something in this art field? Because he used to always say, well, make sure you do something that you can be very, financially successful in, and this is a good route. But he was supportive. He knew since I was young, I was always into the art, so he didn't hold me back. I think for him, he was more watching what would I do with this opportunity. And so the opportunity came, and I was able to succeed in it, and I think it made the family happy.
Very well. But is it lucrative? I mean, with what you do, you are fusing Afrofusion, and you're telling stories. Is it a lucrative sector for
Oh,
you?
very much, because we're getting into a time where we're ready to hear new tales and stories. We're going from a shift of trauma type film, which talks about the history and the sort of things that happen. Of course, you have your thrillers and whatnot, but in my sense, I want to bring the African mythology, things that seem to be forgotten, or we don't take time to go and look into that and bring that to light. Because I enjoyed Greek mythology when I was growing up. I used to go read all the books about Zeus and Hercules. And then at some point getting into this field, I thought, wait a minute, I know we have some African tales, but why isn't it apparent?
Yeah, and why is that not being told on a big screen? Because sometimes we don't tend to see a lot of those stories, even on smaller screens or even big screens, and it's always like you're being told, depending on who you ask about the African story, you're told a different story, so you don't really get to have the perfect picture. So I just want to come just briefly to some of your works. A little bit told me you've done some work for the Avengers.
Yes.
And all of that. So just tell us briefly about some of the works that you've done in Hollywood.
Oh, yes. I have about 20 films to my credit.
Okay,
So,
wow.
again, many Marvel films, The Avengers, Iron Man. I've also done Godzilla, SpongeBob the cartoon as well.
Wow.
I almost can't even remember all of them. I haven't seen all the films yet, but a lot of the work I did was pretty much taking elements, live action, and fusing some of the visual effects into it. And then obviously doing some front of camera acting, NCIS, NCIS LA, so I was able to fulfill a little bit of that dream. But a majority of the time in Hollywood was working on the visual effects for most of the major blockbuster films.
So just how was that feeling like the first time you saw your name on the end credits, like of an Avengers film, like let's say Iron Man or something? I mean, any of them. How was the feeling like seeing your name on the end credits roll out? Because the Marvel movies, they'll show a scene before the end credits itself comes and all of that. How's the feeling like for you?
Oh, I remember. I actually teared up because to me, seeing that, I executed something that I felt a lot of people didn't think I could do. From the moment I left the job that I was doing in Minnesota and saying, well, I'm going to find a way to get myself in these film credits. When I sat in the credits and saw my name there, I do remember my heart pounding tears, and I said, I actually did it.
You did it, yeah.
I broke.
And as a black man, too.
As a black man, too. And that was a studio of about 300 people that I worked with, and only 4 of us were black.
And to have your name on the end credits of an Avengers movie, yeah, that's quite big.
I remember looking around the theater and saying, I wonder how many people know a Ghanaian has his name on here. Because, something to be proud to be Ghanaian, but then proud to be working on such a film of a large scale.
Yeah. So now let's come to some of the works that you've done. You have a very intriguing name, The Lost Comb of Mawu.
Yes.
Are you aware? Because my name is Mauli. So just tell us briefly about The Lost Comb of Mawu and what it entails and how you came about with this inspiration and this whole idea.
Okay, well, The Lost Comb of Mawu, interestingly, during COVID, I know so many people have stories that started from COVID time. We couldn't get out. I had a comb and I broke it. And I had a 3D printer at that time. So I thought, instead of, buying a comb, let me go ahead and print one. So I printed one, and then the artist in me thought, well, let me see if I can design a special comb. I did that. It ended up selling out as I made did a bunch of productions.
During just the COVID period?
Yes.
Wow.
So these combs are selling out. At the same time, I was working on some visual effects. I was trying to improve my skills on visual effects. And what happened is there was a segment of a moment that I was working on some cosmic art. I don't know if you've heard of NFTs.
Yeah, I have, yeah.
Yeah, so
I know
around
about
that
NFTs,
time,
yeah.
I started delving into that.
Yeah, so another time was booming as well, just
was.
right after the COVID period, 2021, 2022, yeah, it was.
Exactly. So I was doing all these visuals, and then I thought to myself, I'd like to
Sell your art,
storyline. Yeah, so I was selling the art, but then I also wanted to start building a storyline. And then how the story of Mawu came is when I started thinking of African mythology. I was going in the books and trying to find these mythological beings from the past. And I came across, I almost can't remember how I came across the name, but I remember coming across the name Mawu, which was like the goddess of life and creation. Yeah. And so I thought, okay, why don't I fuse this mythological being
with their comb?
Yes. And then it came about with the story of how, you know, she created the worlds and earth, and then she created a man being who would take this comb, don it in his afro, and then once he donned it in his afro, it would ground him. Because there is also a lot of magical elements of our hair that we don't even understand.
Yeah, it's a very peculiar part of everyone's ideology.
Exactly. So I thought I'd like to try and find a way that I can not even enhance. I wanted to highlight our culture.
Like tell a story.
And highlight our features, be proud of our natural hair.
How we look like and all that,
But use the comb as a talisman, something that could be used into harnessing a particular type of power, but also being able to use the combs to tell stories of around Africa, the different types of combs they were, you know, how royal combs or the combs depending on the texture of your hair, but really fuse the African mythology. And I wanted to drive people to go in and start saying, oh, who is Mawu? And start asking questions.
For people to become more curious about some of these characters and all of that.
Yes, exactly.
So basically, what you're doing is also sparking some curiosity about people and also our African culture in itself. And I'm sure with doing that, you've had some challenges, right?
Yes.
What have been some of those challenges, and how have you been able to tackle them? Particularly what you're doing, visual effects, you know, to gaming, bringing images to life and all of that.
Well, I think the challenging part has, for me, mostly has been, I guess, the manpower. Doing these sort of animations take quite a bit of people, big teams. And I, at this time, was doing, you know,
everything yourself.
Yeah, about 15 to 20 people, everything from scoring to the 3D modeling, animating, narration, the music. So that had been the big challenge. And so it made the production much longer. However, it was worth it. It ended up winning a pretty prestigious award in the U.S., which took it to where it's going. And yes, in terms of the technology, having the equipment to run such
high-end, detailed graphics and all of that. So briefly, I just want us to talk very briefly. Do you have plans of like going into gaming? Because that space is also very lucrative, and I think I've seen some of your works and what you've done. I think it will really be good, you know, if you venture into that aspect. But what do you make of the gaming sector? Do you think, particularly for African storytelling, do you think that's a very lucrative area?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a gamer myself. And when I was making these animations, a lot of the feedback I received was, hey, is this a new game coming out? It looks like, you know, a cinematic for games. And I've always thought of getting into gaming as well. I do feel that Africa has the potential to take a large
tap
part
into the game,
Yeah, there's so many stories and visuals that we have, our environments. And so it's just a matter of, you know, us getting our heads together and just putting these things. So I could see myself taking this story to the next level and building off of that as well. And getting the opportunity to work in the gaming field, I've gained some knowledge which could at some point help. Yes, exactly.
Okay. But what about the cinema? Because, you know, cinema is quite big. Do you think there's a market or there's a niche for science fiction, African told science fiction stories?
Yes, oh, definitely. I think, you know, being able to branch from a lot of the storytelling that's currently happening now, but being able to tap into the minds of seeing that. Because one of the things, if you notice in many Hollywood films, or many films around the world, when you see films about the future, you don't really see people that look like us.
Yeah, it's true. You always see some some alien-like, I mean, something always very different.
As if we don't have a culture that
we don't exist.
So I think it's very important that we start to look at these films and thinking beyond and saying, oh, well, we're part of the future. We have people that are engineering these things, that are, you know, into these robotics and all the kind of futuristic things. We have to see ourselves in that capacity.
So have you had some collaborations with, let's say, the National Folklore Authority or any of these national bodies that come to you and say, hey, we like what you're doing, we want to partner with you, help you tell some of these African stories?
Not so much in Africa yet. but I've had conversations in the U.S.
Okay.
And while I thought that was fine, my thought was I really want to focus in Africa. I really do. Ghana first. In the U.S., I don't think it would be too hard for me to bring what I'm doing out there. But unfortunately, how I feel about it is once you bring that there, sometimes the studios might strip away what you're trying to tell.
Yeah.
Especially when you're trying to tell our stories in a way that shows our power and strength. Sometimes
Because they don't want that. Sometimes they don't want people to know that aspect of the story.
And we have so many stories in our country, especially back in history. So as I come to Ghana, that's what I'm hoping for, is to be able to reach out to that capacity and say, hey, you know, whether it's starting off in Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, anywhere, but I do think Africa as a whole continent should look into trying to expand with, you know, their own cultural beliefs and expanding, but bringing that high quality caliber to the film and animation.
Speaking of quality, do you have any plans of, you know, training some young people who want to go into, you know, visual effect, filmmaking, science fiction, and telling the African story, and even the gaming as well? Because I think it's a sector it's very unexplored here. I mean, we're beginning to see a lot of gaming hubs right here in Ghana, but we don't see, it's mostly foreign video games. We don't see a lot of the African video games. Maybe perhaps we can start on mobile. I mean, we can begin to have some of the games on the mobile phones, and perhaps would build it up.
Yeah, I definitely plan to. I did do my Master's of Fine Arts in Visual Effects and Animation, specifically.
Oh, so you're purely an arts guy. I did visual arts in secondary school too.
Oh, okay, yes. So I did my Master's specifically to gain the knowledge to be able to train. I knew that I would want to do that in the future. Being someone that's coming from the industry in the U.S., and having the goal of coming to Ghana and helping fill in the gap, I do understand that there's not as many Ghanaians that might know the skill set I have, especially they have not had a chance to work on big films. So I definitely plan to do some training. I'm building a facility in Cape Coast right now. However, I know that a lot of the hub to here is in Accra, so I am
You have to kind of bring
it back. I'm working on providing online training as well. And at some point, maybe even getting a space out here and doing some in-person training. But I would definitely intend to train the arts, because in order for me to make these animations and sci-fi films happen and to build a team, I have to train them. So it may start with bringing some people on board that have the skills and potential, and as they go, I'll train them along the way.
What message would you have for like an average young filmmaker who wants to venture into science fiction?
Oh, I would say definitely dream and just come up with it, but also try and bring in the stories of your culture and your values into it as well, and explore. You know, there's so much exploration, because thinking about the future, that doesn't exist, so it forces you to think outside of the box. And so how do you see your community in the future? How can you use sci-fi, to impact them? However, there's people that love doing thriller, people that love doing horror. Yeah. So I could say
action.
Hey, yeah, exactly. So
comedy.
Exactly. So I would say fulfill all those areas in sci-fi and futurism in any capacity, so that you're able to, you know, explore and go beyond the storytelling of history, which actually a good point is you can bring a lot of history into futurism, because a lot of sci-fi and
you have to tell it in the future.
You have to understand, well, why is this, you know,
happening,
such an importance? And so then you can continue to educate your own community by bringing those elements of the past into these stories of futurism.
So basically, it's not just about storytelling, but it's also about educating people as well.
Yes. I think that's a big thing. That's I've had several conversations in Ghana where I hear that sometimes they say that the youth is losing the history of what is going on. So
like I said earlier, I mean, depending on who you speak to, you get a different history about this country, depending on who you speak to. So it's a bit distorted. We've not, and also I think we've not been able to tell our own stories and also keep the archives of what happened before us. That will kind of give us an idea of where we want to go, but we've not really had that here. So I think it's a very important part. Particularly, even what you're doing, you're telling African stories, but you're also using science fiction as well. So finally, I just want to ask you, what legacy do you want to leave I mean, when you're with everything that you're doing? Because I think what you're doing is very unique, some of the projects that you have and all of that. What's the ideal goal for you?
Well, the legacy is really to be impactful in the Ghanaian film, animation, and gaming industry. That's why I did not stay in the U.S. to do what I was doing. I wanted to come here and take everything that I've learned and help fill in the gaps. Things, for example, like animation. One of the most important things we can do with animation is teaching the children, so the children see, people that look like them in animations and learning, taking it into gaming, taking it into film. So yes, the primary legacy I'd like to leave behind is the fact that I'm able to come in and fill the gap and help within the Ghanaian film industry, in all areas of it, particularly sci-fi, action, and animation.
I have one final question before we go. How expensive is it to venture into what you're doing? I mean, if you can give us a fair idea of how much it costs for even just like one project.
Oh yeah, a project can be quite expensive, but it can, you can find ways to get around it where it's not so. But I think the most expensive parts about it is the computer system, finding the systems that can run animations, as well as there's visual effects, and sometimes the software tools. But right now there's software tools out there that you can learn that are just as good as industry standards. So in fact, while I'm here training, I want to make sure that I use those free tools, because I know many Ghanaians might not be able to go buy a particular software that I used in the studios that cost the equivalent of 80,000 CDs here.
It'll be too expensive for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it can be, I think there's a lot of creativity here to be able to do such thing, but a lot of the costs may come in from, obtaining the equipment, obviously hiring the help if you can. But I think, in Ghana, if you can find community that wants to help and they believe in your story magic, then you can get those people to help you create such a big project, and then everybody gets a piece of the pie.
Nice. Very, very final question. I know I said that so many times, but apart from the Lost Comb of Mao, do you have any other upcoming projects we should be looking out for?
Yes, I'll be working on some mini episodes to bring on YouTube. So I'm working on several storylines, several that are animation based, and then several that are live action. I'm not sure if you're familiar with live action.
I know yes. Live action, like the Lion King, and I mean that kind of live action.
The live action more so like using real film, but bringing some visual effects elements into it. Yeah. So there'll be the animation and then some visual effects.
That's like the Michael Jordan, the one with the Bugs Bunny.
Yes, incorporating those. Yeah. So yeah, I plan to do some short mini episodes on YouTube as I work on the bigger project here.
Okay, nice. So Michael, thank you so much. It was really nice learning from you and also learning to know about how to tell African stories through science fiction. Many thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Nice. So I've been speaking with Kwame-Michael Brako. He's an Afrofuturist and a filmmaker who is telling African stories through science fiction. He's been my guest on GhanaWeb TV. Before we go, don't forget to log on to our website, www.ghanaweb.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and X at the GhanaWeb, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel, GhanaWeb TV. Once again, I am Mauli Ahomega. Many thanks for watching.